Tapping in.
Are we live?
Miles, Xavier, we added again tech companies, discrimination, sexism. It seems now that our entire show is dedicated to tech companies, discrimination, and racism. Part 29.
Big facts. These tech companies got to get their stuff together. And I'm dying because you introduced, I would have introduced the segment the exact same way. Here we are again, right? Another tech company, another payout, $118 million. This time to the ladies, right? I saw ladies drop. Remember we had a ladies drop for the podcast?
We had a ladies job. Yeah, we abused that.
We did.
We broke the button. We broke the button. Every time we say it, that played about 6 times the episode.
Oh man, shout out to growth. But over 15,000 ladies are represented in this class action lawsuit that Google just decided to settle for $118 million. That breaks down to about $8,000 a person. Put the legal fees on it. I don't want to count nobody's pockets. It's not a lot. It's probably not enough, but hopefully this is a win that symbolizes a change, right? So when you looked into this story, man, what did you take from it?
I took from it the fact that, we're, for one, last time we had a conversation about pay gap, I did bring up the nuances of calculating pay gap, and saying that, you saying that it could be, it's a fraction of a whole pie of things that determine pay gap and things like that. And even though, research right now is saying that, I want to. Sometimes you just gotta listen and believe women, man. That's it. Sometimes you just gotta listen and believe women, because this is another instance of this. Google's not the only company that has done this. LinkedIn last month also had to do the exact same thing, where they're paying $4.4 million to 2,352 staff members in California. So it's not something that is. It's not something that, a lot of times I think we overcomplicate the nature of things, and sometimes there's blatant as this.
I really appreciate how you were so thoughtful and acknowledging our past conversations on this topic and where we're at. Trying to navigate that distinction between what data is telling us about the entire job market overall and this specific instance at Google. And it's really interesting to look at this. And to me, when I looked at the lawsuit, right, they're essentially alleging two things. They're alleging that Google pays women less than men in the same job. And they're alleging that these tracks that Google puts its employees on, essentially their trajectory for professional progress, that it discriminates in putting women on lower tracks with basically a comparable amount of experience. And those things, I believe, are measurable, right? And I think the most comfortable position I can sit in this conversation is if they and they will, part of the settlement is that third parties now are going to come in and examine, right, kind of the extent to which their practices are discriminatory. And if they find that either of those things are true, that Google pays women less in the same job, or that Google puts women like systematically on a lower trajectory for career growth, then they better pay up. They better run it back. I hope that this 118 isn't the end of this, because it's really that cut and dry for me, right? Like, if there's a way to measure this type of discrimination, go ahead and measure it and make them pay up if they're doing it. That puts all companies on notice. You can use whatever. I hope they make public whatever metrics they use, this third party uses to evaluate Google, and that other companies take the initiative to say, let's check ourselves using whatever metrics are available to understand the equity of pay distribution. And if we off, let's get correct before somebody makes us get correct. I mean, that's what I see in this.
A lot of these third party intermediaries that we speak about are relying a lot on automated vetting when it comes to job applications and things like that. And in there, we've seen that there's also discrimination in there. You know, people with um, more exotic, especially Arabian last names here in the UK are least likely to be able to find a job through those automated systems more so than somebody with a more traditional name. So even within that, you know, there's still, it's not an end all be all solution in saying, yeah, Google is just going to get the third party to be able to do the vetting and the sorting. Those third parties also need to be a little bit more scrutinized as well to ensure that their process of allocating investment is fair, because sexism and pay gap, sexism like this, right, is happening in the tech world. Also, what they call Hindu phobia. You know, there's people in
Mm.
the tech world is full of people from India and Southeast Asia, right? And so you have this huge flux of people in there, and there's also dynamics that operate in there. The LinkedIn, there was a. This is the first time Google got sued for this. There was another time where Google also got sued, where they were saying that women and Asians, right, were being unfairly compensated. So it's deeper than is deeper than just Nino Brown.
Word. And I appreciate you bringing those up, because when there's a history of discriminatory practices, you take a newer allegation or even the settlement in a different light, right? Like, it's hard for Google to say, like, not us. Our track record is, because it ain't spotless, right? So, yeah, I think that's important context. And I appreciate you also bringing up that these third parties need to be scrutinized. Whoever's doing the vetting, right? Absolutely, absolutely. But I hope that this means, and the added attention to this and intentionality in this means that we're getting to a place where it's becoming important to companies, whether for the right reasons or the wrong reasons, even if it's only to protect their bottom line. It's becoming important to companies to understand the ways that their practices impact different groups. And if I'm all for bringing that to the forefront, because you're absolutely right. Even if this one third party, even in this specific case, doesn't do an amazing job or doesn't set the gold standard for how we can move forward, I hope that this is a stepping stone for us to continue to work toward that place, to where it's not even a conversation, right? Where it's like, hey, we have things in place that are thinking about what it means to be a woman, what it means to be a person of color, what it means to be LGBTQ, right, in these spaces. And there are structures in place not to disadvantage these people, but to make sure that everybody is treated fairly.
That's why I encourage open conversation when it comes to salary and payment. You know, it is taboo, and it is sensitive. I've been burned with trying to be very open and honest about mine in the past before, so I understand how sensitive it can be. But the collective bargaining power we have when we understand um the differences is large, right? Is quite large. And so in this particular instance, Kelly Ellis, who was a preschool teacher in Google kindergarten, was making $18,000 a year, and a male counterpart was making $21,000 a year. An open conversation about that, from the early onset, would be to be like, "Hey, yo, what's everybody making?" Just so that if whoever's up here, we can all get up there together. But this, you know, it's been brought into our culture to be very secretive about it, and I think that's just propaganda, if you ask me. But money's a
Word.
sensitive thing to talk about. Money's a very, very
It
sensitive thing to
is.
talk about.
It is. But I think additional or in like increased transparency would do us all a lot of good. And yeah, we would have to confront our egos in a lot of ways if we made that choice, right? But I think exactly what you're talking about, from salaries and understanding who's getting paid what and why and is it fair, but even to like, as we try and navigate this world, as we try and navigate, like, I'm thinking especially of young people trying to figure out, get a foothold in society, figure out who they are, figure out what it means to walk in a professional path and create a career, or just to support a family. We don't talk enough about what it takes. We don't talk enough about the challenges. We don't talk enough about, like, we're not open enough. Everybody's walking around acting like everything's all good and dealing with, whatever issues and challenges they're facing on the inside. And I feel that it's sensitive. I feel what you're saying about putting yourself out there and getting burned. But I think that transparency would do us good if we can find a way to start having these conversations about the things that make us uncomfortable. I think we'll find that in a lot of ways we're not alone, and that will benefit us greatly, on the collective bargaining side, on the organizing side, and on the just the healing human side, bro.
And I'm sure there's a whole lot of apps and services that allow people to have inputs on what their salary is. Glassdoor kind of allows for that to a certain extent. I would like to see it be a bit more transparent. Glassdoor, I feel like there's a lot of room for tampering on that platform, but there are Reddit pages or whatever. And like we always say, man, if the community to be able to do something like that is not there, then you make that community. Make it an anonymous thing. But I'm gonna tell you now. I'm gonna tell you now. It's not a popular conversation. It's not something.
Yo, Mike check, Mike chickadee. They tried to cancel my brother for collective bargaining, but we out
That
here
you
freeze
see,
away.
and it happens that quick. It happens right. It happens just that quick. Happens just that quick. They're trying to get us out of here, man.